In the summer of 1944, after many years in hiding, Anne Frank wrote eloquently in her diary about courage, strength, and our ability to overcome the blows that inevitably come to everyone. Qualities of resilience, qualities that helped Anne Frank face and survive years of immense adversity.
This is about that very quality, resilience. The times have changed dramatically. Many of our children are not acquiring the ability to be resilient. And as a result, many of those kids are not overcoming hardships.
What's the difference between a resilient kid and one who isn't? What you're going to see is a very private and intimate look at families. Families we have followed for nearly a year. Real people living the stories of their lives. Stories we have joined in progress, personal accounts which weave together to tell a larger story.
We talk with dozens of parents, kids, and experts because we wanted to learn from their perspectives. What we found may surprise you. As you will see, some succeed and some don't. But there are lessons to be learned from both success and failure here if you're willing to look. And we need to look.
Flat line, stand clear, wrap them up, 140, let's go, powered up.
I'm an alcoholic, and I was drinking a lot.
I mean, I wouldn't see my parents for like weeks at a time sometimes, just because I'd wake up at noon and they'd already be at work and I wouldn't come home till 2.
I was perpetrated. Then as I got older, I started doing it to like my sister and stuff.
My stepdad used to abuse my mom and me, physically and emotionally. When I was little, I was sexually abused.
When I started drinking, I stopped eating. I was having sex.
Drugs began to govern my life.
So I'd see him every other weekend, and we were at the Renaissance Festival, and he had way too much to drink, and so he just thought it'd be great to slap me around all over the place.
Most of the time, I was really scared of emotions.
My parents just don't see what I want to do is like something productive or good to do.
I see other kids with their dads, and you know, I was like, wish I had a dad, but I don't.
I just get angry, and then I blow things out of proportion, and I throw things and yell and curse and stuff.
I was so disgusted with myself that I couldn't hide the feelings anymore, so I had to start using drugs to help me like run from the feelings.
So I started getting depressed because I didn't know how to properly deal with my feelings without using drugs.
I guess I figured she didn't know what she was talking about. Like, she didn't know what she was doing, or she hadn't been there and she didn't know what I was going through.
It was basically like I felt like she didn't care, and that lonely feeling came back, the hollow feeling again.
I mean, it's not like I don't love them or anything, they just piss me off.
The Aspen Academy is what is termed a Wilderness High-Impact Intervention Program. It's a program which has been designed specifically for seriously troubled kids ranging in age from 13 to 18. It's typical of a growing number of such programs around the country which deal with some of the fierce problems kids face today. An updated version, if you will, of the tough love approach. It's designed for kids with hard-line problems. This is Mike.
Why are you here?
Because I do too many drugs and I'm a teenage alcoholic.
A lot of kids do drugs and drink. They don't end up here.
Yeah. Guess they either keep it hidden better or their parents just don't care.
So you feel like you're here because your parents care?
Yeah. I didn't really try to hide it at all.
How did you get started doing that kind of stuff?
Pretty much curiosity, and then I found out I liked it a lot and decided I wanted to do it every day.
Instead of doing what?
Being at my house with my parents, or going to school, or any of that.
Do you feel they have any responsibility when you return home to do anything different to help you?
No. Well, I mean, like, if I'm gonna change here, and they're supposed to be seeing some therapist also, so, well, actually, I'm not going home, that's right, I'm going to boarding school. I keep thinking I'm going home, but I keep forgetting. I'm not going home after this, I'm going to a boarding school, so I could really care less now.
Do you want to go home?
Yeah, of course I want to go home.
Whose decision was it for you to go to boarding school?
My parents?
So you don't have any say in that?
No.
I hear a lot of the kids saying that they're not being heard, and they're not, they don't really feel like they have a say, especially when they get sent here even. They don't really have a say in anything. A lot of times the parents may not have been really paying attention. The kids had a lot of freedom, and then all of a sudden the parents tried to rope them back in. I've seen a lot of that. And then the kids don't understand really what rules are.
Some parents are very concerned that the child won't love them if they set limits. And once in a while we have to tolerate our child being angry with us. And one very important in terms of the development of self-discipline is kids have to understand why there are rules. We still may set rules, but they have to understand why there are rules so that they can then develop self-discipline or self-control.
Like, they don't try to look at anything from my point of view.
What, like they were never 17?
Yeah. I mean, they do. They try to relate, like, oh, I smoked pot, but not when I was as young as you, and da-da-da-da-da. And, like, I'm just like, shut up. I don't. I mean, it's like they're trying to fool me or something. I don't know what they're trying to do, really. I think they're a bunch of hypocrites.
The number one factor for me, from my observation, is certainly communication. Communication breakdown in the home is a very common thing. Parents communicating what they really expectations of their children, or children being able to voice their opinions and be heard by their parents. It's something I think we all struggle with in our own lives, to be heard and to be appreciated.
Do you think you've changed?
I already plan on changing when I'm going home. I mean, I leave in 13 days from here. But, I mean, they're not even going to give me a chance, so I'm over it. It's just the same thing, like when I came here, I'll go to boarding school and cope, wait till I'm 18 and leave.
You see a kid, you know, it's 16 years old, it's 6 foot tall, strong, good in sports, yet has no self-esteem, no self-confidence, and I think that's where it comes from. When you have no self-confidence, you make poor decisions for yourself.
They're not in control of their lives. They're being influenced so greatly by outside influences that they're not really realizing where their life is taking them.
Fear rises in a kid when a kid doesn't know how to solve problems because he hasn't watched mom and dad solve problems. And so the fear tends to become overwhelming, and they seek some way out or around that rather than figuring out how to face it.
I was making bad decisions, like doing drugs and hanging out with the wrong people. Letting other people influence me and not sticking to what I believe in.
We'd been in family counseling, therapy, seen a psychiatrist, all in an effort to reverse some of the behavior, and nothing seemed to be working.
My dad used to beat me around all the time, and just he told me to have a nice life, you know, and then he didn't really want to see me again. And I guess from there, it just all went downhill. It was horrible.
Well, I know that I share some of the blame because, and as we have learned in a lot of the parenting groups that we've been attending, we rescue them from consequences of their actions.
Well, it means somebody that you resists things a little bit. Have to be told and maybe a little pressure put onto them now and then.
Resilience to me means someone who is strong and confident and can work through problems.
I think of someone who can do something on their own, that they're capable of handling whatever the situation may be without help from the outside.
Being flexible and able to bounce back in situations. I'd say resiliency is taking whatever's given to you in life and making the best out of it.
I think of someone that is able to, to donate something to society.
Being able to cope with life, cope with situations, bounce back from adversity.
If you're having a bad day, a bad situation, maybe a rude comment by somebody, it's just picking yourself up again and again.
It's a much misused term. Actually, most of us who do research in resilience look at it as a process, not a trait. The ability to overcome great odds over time.
When I use the term resilience, I simply mean strength under adversity. To me and to a lot of my colleagues, resilience is not by any means well-being. Very, very different terms.
What is resilience?
The definition of resilience is the capacity to overcome adversity. So it's been a term that's been reserved for a small group of children, or adults for that matter, who face trying times and overcome those times.
Turnabout is an intervention program which, unlike Aspen, is a home-based approach. But the problems are equally as difficult and complex as other stories.
It was probably about the time he hit junior high, which is where kids tend to find more independence because of the way school is structured. The problems were multiple. Such things as we'd set down a consequence and ask that the consequence be followed, and the consequence sometimes was followed and sometimes was not, and just openly defiant to some of the rules that we had.
I noticed that like all the friends around me didn't care about life really. They just wanted to do what they wanted to do. And I chose their path, and I wanted to have a free life because I thought it was cool that they could just do whatever they wanted.
A social climate will determine whether aggressive and violent behavior increases or whether it decreases. And you can change a social climate. It can be altered based upon messages that are given.
Well, I had a couple friends that I was still with, and then we moved into junior high, and there was older kids, and we kind of combined. And so we started doing our negative behaviors when we combined in junior high.
Like any other parent, you don't want them to do that, so you try to teach them as best you can. And we allowed whatever punishment to come without interceding or trying to minimize it. Whoever had caught him, whether it be the school or the police, we said, you have a consequence, you've got to pay for it, and I'm praying that you'll learn from this lesson.
And he didn't?
No.
I justify myself, like, I'd think of excuses that would make it right, so I wouldn't feel bad inside, like to make me look like a better person inside.
He had an attitude where he liked the thrill, it was exciting to him, and the fear of getting caught, I don't think had been something that he really thought about what his punishment would be.
Because when you're doing all that stuff, you really don't care. You don't look at all of what's going to happen. You don't see that you might be put into turnabout, or you don't see you're going to lose all the skills that you have.
How'd you end up here?
I ran away a lot. I disrespected my parents very much, and I treated them very poorly.
She was almost 6 when we got her. And big tragedies in her life, losing her mother and her father, and a divorce before that happened. And so she's always had sadness in her life. And we just always attributed everything she did to, well, Carrie's had problems in her life. She'll get by it. She'll get over it. And she didn't get over it. It just got bigger and bigger and bigger.
I was really angry and really hurt, and I didn't want to love these people as my parents. I didn't want to love them as my parents. I was scared. I was scared that my aunt, my mom, would end up leaving me or abandoning me. So, and every second that I did feel loved by her or my dad, I wanted to get away from it as fast as possible. So I ran away. I fought with them, tried to cause chaos.
We just thought she was still hurting because her parents were both dead. And excusing her because of that, we excused her a lot for a lot of years.
When I ran away, I would drink and I would use drugs like marijuana and cigarettes and alcohol. And it came to the point where I used so much alcohol that I was lying in a hospital bed almost dead. And the doctors didn't think I was going to make it because I had alcohol poisoning. And my parents were sitting there crying, and I could hear what was going on. I could hear my parents, and I could hear them say, "God, please help her. She deserves another chance."
How about your dad? Is there anything you don't like about your dad? What?
That he's mean most of the time.
He's mean most of the time? Is he mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
What does he do?
He hits us sometimes for nothing.
When you get in trouble, what does your mom or dad do?
They yell.
They yell? Why do they do that? Does it help when they yell?
Very often, unfortunately, we adults forget that kids are human beings. We need to treat children like they're human beings. I'm amazed at how many children from high school age all the way through elementary school have expressed that to me. We don't treat them like they're human beings. They know. We don't need to give them all the answers. They can find those for themselves. Children have a lot more knowledge than they used to have. They have fewer experiences to make sense of that knowledge. The situations that we see now, children are far beyond their years. It's almost to the extent that we have stolen the mystery of childhood, and we expect kids to go from birth right to adolescence and adulthood.
We're hurrying them. We dress young children the way we dress ourselves. We expect them at young ages to be willing to engage in the kinds of activities that we think are important for them, often without any real understanding or knowledge, for that matter, other than our belief that this really will make a positive difference for them.
I thought they came out and they would be the way I raised them. Not even close. Every one of those kids are born differently. They've all been raised in the same home, the same way, and every one of them are different. And they come that way.
It's the day-to-day interactions. It's not just giving one vitamin pill. It's parents in every interaction they have having a certain mindset themselves that says, in this interaction, I can really start to develop resilience or foster resilience.
Their mom is under a lot of pressure to take good care of them when I'm at work all the time. And I work a lot, and I know she struggles a lot.
Why did she circle? Or who
I did.
circled?
I circled them because I picked just like things that.
What are you doing, Kim?
Like the main ones that I knew of that I could look up and find a definition for.
Okay, you get something and clean it up.
This is from my thing. Says you did not follow the directions because I didn't put it in. But she still gave us all 25 points.
Mom?
That's
What's
just,
your name? So do you have to rewrite the rough draft again? Or
Yeah.
just...
You have to, everybody has to. And then you add 12, which is 17.
What you do is you put like
Oh, put them in
here and do
parentheses.
them both,
Okay,
and then
okay,
figure it
okay.
out. And does that work out the right answer?
Wait. Okay.
Are those clean?
15.
They're clean. No, they're not. And that's not green.
15 divided by 3 is
What?
5.
No, it's not.
And then 12 divided by 4 is 3. So 5 plus 3. Oh, it's done.
Before you get to what to do, you have to have some understanding of why am I doing it. I think it first begins with a commitment that I believe this is an important part of raising my child. And then an open mind to be willing to examine what you're doing and is it achieving your goal? Is my behavior, are my actions gaining or leading me closer to helping my child achieve that outcome, or in fact is it pulling me further away?
My parents, they have a fight maybe twice or 3 times a week. It was so sad, hard. When I remember on those, and when I get married with my wife, I start doing the same things my father did to my mom. I start drinking, no money in the pockets, no money to the wife, only bad things, because I have that school from my parents, especially from my father. I'm not trying to say he was a bad father. Those things I learned from there was no good, and I start doing the same in my family. But I remember when I see our first baby, then she was growing. I think it was 2 or 3 years old. Then we started yelling each other when we was driving or at home. Then I saw the little girl. She went to like this to those here. Then those little things start moving me myself. I'm wrong, but I was thinking I'm the man. That's the way I have to be, but I was wrong.
I don't know how I get as strong to because I always have a dream to have a beautiful life, not a fighting marriage. So if I want a good kiss, we need to be good together and strong together. So I tried to talk to him, and I tried to tell him that I accept him however he is. But those things that he's doing, they're not going to be good.
I just decided, I talked to her, and I quit doing all those bad things and start like a real husband. And since that's 8 years ago.
Sometimes I wonder if possibly we don't have too much excess around. Children are getting too much and they expect more and they don't give as much because they think it's just owed to them.
Parents seem to have some of these kids, very little input and interest in what their kids do. It's like, here are the car keys, here's the checkbook, here's the credit card, just go out and have fun and don't bother me.
We live in an area where there's a lot of wealthy people, and those kids don't have to do much. Everything's given to them. I don't know what they're learning. It'd be kind of scary.
What I really see is a lack of boundaries in their lives with their parents, that their parents really do love them, but they spoil them. And so they think by loving them, by giving them things and giving them a lot of freedom, that they're helping them.
Well, I think that they have less resilience because they don't do as many hard things as they're growing up. I don't think they have as much structure in the homes, and I don't think that they try and fail and try and succeed. Most of our kids that come in have not done very many hard things in their lives.
If we solve problems for them, if we don't permit them to make mistakes and see that they can learn from these mistakes, then when that child someday faces more difficult situations, they will not have the resources available to solve it because they have not developed those components of what we call a resilient mindset.
The world's just getting worse and worse, yeah, and I don't want him to be all getting mixed up and stuff, you know. I'm like really scared about it. I didn't want to have kids because I didn't want them to be, the world's just getting so bad.
When we look at, is this the very best of times for children, the statistics dealing with abuse, with neglect, with social and criminal problems among youth argue that this is probably not one of the best times to be a child.
It's bizarre to me. I look back and I can't even explain why I did some of the things I did. You know, I was always getting in fights with people, usually not winning. I wasn't the biggest kid back then. But yeah, I mean, I would steal things and then I would lie a lot to cover it up. And even when basically the truth was easier to tell.
You know, he would just act out and kind of out of control, and everyone wanted to blame you as a parent or tell you what you were doing wrong. And
there were many times that I wondered if Todd would ever make it in life. I pretty much resigned myself to the fact that he would end up being a laborer or you know, digging ditches for a living.
Biology is not destiny. You may have a high-risk kid at birth, but that doesn't mean that you can't do a lot of things so that that child can become more resilient.
There was always contention in the home because he couldn't walk past another one of our kids without pushing him or...
When you walked by him, you always had to kind of be... Anytime you walked by him at any point, you had to be really afraid he's gonna hit you. You're okay.
You knew he was going to give you a dead arm or tackle you to the ground and wrestle you, give you a wedgie or something. You knew he was going to do something. You didn't know what it was, but you knew he was going to do something.
I remember my parents like ready to kill him. That's the most I remember.
You know, and yeah, there's a lot of anger and frustration, and you just have to be careful.
Less than 10 years ago, Todd Rose was a high school dropout and a teenage father, a young man with limited prospects and few chances to succeed.
I wanted so much to be like every young kid, to have friends and things like that, and you just don't realize that. You realize that you feel a little bit of animosity from other people and things like that, but you really don't know why, and you just sort of think it's their issue. You know, I don't know why they don't like me. I don't know. I'm just like everybody else. There were times when you literally just, it was so devastating inside. You just think, you know, you wanted people to like you so much, and you just wanted to have like a sort of a normal childhood, and for the most part, you just can't.
Dr. Emmy Werner is a developmental psychologist and research professor at the University of California at Davis. Her research on the question of how children cope with difficult life experiences has spanned 50 years.
Children bring to the world a lot of individual dispositions, whether they're plucky or shy or whatever else. But just having that alone isn't enough, and I think one of the reasons why people write books about how parents can help children to be resilient or more resilient is that you also need support, protective factors from outside.
I guess first of all, Todd was our first child, so we didn't know what we were getting into. We thought all kids were this way, and it wasn't until we had more children that we realized that Todd was different. But we also realized he was smart. I thought he'd be a smart criminal rather than a smart student, but
I always had faith in him. And maybe that's just a mother sort of an instinct, but I knew what he was deep down inside. And so my whole thing was just holding out until he could realize. And there were a lot of disappointments along the way, and I try not to make long-term goals for my children in my own mind, because you need to let them develop. But I knew he had it in him.
It was an internal battle every day with myself, you know, and I would do things, and as I got older, I'd realize, oh, that was really dumb, you know. But then your self-esteem's so fragile that you're not going to admit that, and you end up wanting to fight the world over it. I remember being in a class, the one thing I turned to, even when I was doing poorly and everything else, I loved to write poetry. It was just, for me, it came easy, and I really, really enjoyed it. So we were in English class since 7th grade, and they said, okay, here's an assignment that you're going to do, and it's a major project. We're going to write poetry. I thought, hey, you know, this is something I know I can do. And so I went home, and I spent so much time writing this poem on ski jumping. I took it back to school, and I turned it in, and I actually, this is the thing, I mean, I was sort of bragging, you know, cocky would probably be a good word, sort of scared inside, but you didn't want to show that. I'm going to win this, you know, I wrote a great poem, and whatever. So I come back when it's their time to give them back, you know, a week later, and I get my paper back. Not only did I not win, which is fine, I got an F. And I thought, geez, you know, I really think at least it was worth something. So I asked my teacher, and what he told me is, you couldn't have written that poem. There's no way you could have written that poem. And so I went home just devastated, because I mean, I really wanted to try. And not that, and I don't mean to put all the blame on someone, because there was interaction, you know, over the course of the semester that would say that this person isn't really trying. But my parents called and said, no, look, I was there when he wrote it, never would give in, and so I failed. And I honestly remember walking out of that junior high school, just, you know, I give up, I quit. I really, really do. And I don't mean, like I said, I don't mean to blame one incident, but I just remember that thought in my head, like, what do I have to do?
We decided that it wasn't for his best interest or for the school's best interest to have him there, because he wasn't going to graduate, and he was more into the playing around and partying and the stink bomb thing in the class, and so we felt that it was time to put an end to the whole school situation and let Todd maybe go to work.
You know, in my mind, I just thought, well, I mean, okay, like I said, you don't have a very long-term perspective. You don't realize that you need to graduate. I mean, the things are very important in your long-term future. And, I had a girlfriend who's my wife now. And so it was basically, it was troublesome. And you see, look, I don't have a high school diploma. I'm working as a stock boy, for minimum wage. And we were actually just found out we were about to have a family. And so that was sort of like about as rock bottom as you can get, because I hadn't been very successful at anything, and so there wasn't much to think that would change anytime soon.
If you follow kids who develop problems because maybe someone didn't treat them right, or who became for a while hateful, if you follow those over time, most of the ones who, let's say, became delinquent or had serious mental health problems or were teenage parents eventually actually turn out all right. And the turning points in their lives oftentimes come later then, in the third or sometimes fourth decade of life, and they come with opening of opportunities in the community. Whether it's a community college education or finding a stable partner in marriage.
He was very popular. People seemed to really like him. He was always busy doing something, teasing someone, but people knew who he was. Some people really liked him. He was nice to a lot of people, and some people really thought he was just obnoxious.
I was 19, and like I said, my girlfriend, we were expecting, we'd gotten married, we were expecting a child early on. I was still 19 when he was born, Austin. And I remember we were sitting in a hospital, and my wife was asleep, from the labor, and they brought in our son, and they said, "Oh, she's not here. Do you want to hold him?" And I didn't know what to think. It was all kind of overwhelming, and I just sat there and I realized, just that very moment, that this is not about me anymore, and things need to change, because there's a young lady and now a young child who are totally dependent on the outcome of my life.
I was always confident that we would be okay. We would be fine. Things would work out for us.
It's an unbelievable feeling when you have somebody else that says, "Look, I believe in you, right? I believe that you'll make it all right for us." And it's an overwhelming feeling, and it was the first time I'd ever felt that sort of sense of responsibility.
Hope is a very fragile thing. So hope seems to be nourished by those other people in the lives of resilient children.
Well, I sat there and you realize, okay, things need to change. I can't make $6 an hour forever. That's not really going to do well for our family. And, I just thought I need to go to school. And it's interesting because prior to moving on to college and things like that, I had a reporter asked me a question. Well, why did you choose school after such a horrible experience, and things were just terrible for you? And I thought, that's amazing. I really don't have an answer to that. And I realized that after all the frustrations and struggles that your parents and you go through and you butt heads a number of times, that it comes down to that example that they set for you. And I look at my mom and dad and the educational example they set for me. There wasn't a doubt in my mind that that's what I needed to do.
That's really surprising.
You always feel like you're teetering on the edge of complete failure in that situation. And so, yeah, it's very surprising to have Todd give you that kind of feedback. And it's rewarding.
I went and took the GED, Graduate Equivalency Diploma, and I did well on that. And I thought, okay, now what do I do here? And I applied to a number of schools in the state and was promptly rejected nobody wants a high school dropout with a GED and low ACT scores. And there was a local university, Weber State, who said, okay, you can come, but you have to go off-campus classes at night.
He talked about off and on, I'd like to get some education. And, we'd always say, yeah, you sure, go ahead. But it came on gradually. Hey, we had several years between being pulled out of high school and him actually starting school, and several years and many jobs.
We'd both gone to the university and graduated, and so we just say, hey, this is great, and this is how you do it, and then you just stand back and cross your fingers.
There was a lot of self-doubt. I mean, I had no expectations for myself. I don't think anybody really had many expectations for me, except for they were happy that at least I was making this effort. And so the compliments and stuff were sort of let's just wait and see kind of attitude from all of us, including myself.
I was a young child in World War II, and that was a war where some 13 million children were killed, and many more were maimed. And I'm half French, half German, a quarter Jewish, and the rest Catholic under Hitler. If you didn't have a sense of humor, then I don't know how you could have survived. I then grew up in a family where everyone died. No one survived except my mother and I. And I had a first-hand opportunity to see sometimes the difference between kids who survived saturation bombing or whatever kinds of political persecutions and those who fell by the wayside. Going through this at an early age gives you actually a perspective that you're grateful every day after that you're still alive. So ironically, probably my so-called resilience came from that experience. I don't recommend it to everyone. Some of us are probably born more, hopeful. And a sense of humor, which is, by the way, something that many resilient children show, is probably something that you can model but not necessarily train, But having that is a very important protective factor in one's life. Then I did a lot of work overseas with UNICEF, which is the United Nations Children's Agency, and I worked with children in India and Southeast Asia and Africa. And I was amazed at how many of these children turned out okay in spite of war and refugee camp experiences and so forth. So by and by, I took a look at those who survived and thrived rather than those who fell by the wayside. We have an opportunity, I think, across the lifespan to enhance resilience by hopefully combining or teaching children the competence and the faith to overcome the odds, but most of all, by bringing in people who care along the way.
It has continually amazed me, regardless, again, of the parent skills and the way that the parent reacts to the child. Children love their parents, and there's no way around that. At one point in time, we felt that we could do it without the parents. It just won't happen. I don't think that any parent starts out by saying, I want to do a lousy job with my child. I don't want to give my child what they need. What we need to be able to do is support parents, give them the tools to be good parents. There's not a manual that comes with children when they're born, like our automobiles and VCRs. We need to help give them the skills within their own framework and who they are to become better parents. We need to be patient. We need to allow them to fail every once in a while as well and be there as a support to help them develop and hone those skills.
One of the greatest obstacles to learning, to taking appropriate risks, to really enjoying life is the fear of mistakes. I think many people would rather spend much of their energy avoiding mistakes than facing risks and learning new things.
I was brought up in orphanages and reform schools and in the streets and foster homes. I had a variety of families that I could take the good things from. Too many people focus on the negatives in their lives growing up, and rather than focusing on the negatives, I focused on the positives of each person that I grew up with in my lifetime.
Well, I always felt, when I was growing up, because I grew up in Chicago in the projects, I always felt, and rightly so, that my parents could have been a lot better. We didn't have to live in the projects. Both my parents always worked. I think basically it was their own negative seeds which had been implanted in them when they were growing up, that they never figured that they could achieve more than they had.
We co-parent or we co-discipline. I probably do more of the disciplining on my daughter, and he does more of the disciplining on my son, I think.
Is it mine? Is it mine?
Listen to me. Listen to me. Look at me. Quit playing your games and quit acting silly. Look at me. Go put this in Brother's room and this in Brother's room. Put it on his bed. And put this in your room where it goes. Hurry up. Thank you.
My children know that you know, Mom's not perfect. Mom can make mistakes, but at least Mom is going to show him that, okay, I've made a mistake, now let's see the best way of remedying this, of fixing this, and doing it right. And I hope that by showing them that example, they won't be afraid to make mistakes of their own.
You opened it already. I had to. Why? Because you didn't have to open that already. To turn this off either, and no, you have did
Uh-huh.
not. Don't sit there and lie to me. Don't sit there and lie to me. You didn't have to open that. You just wanted to see if it was a winner. You couldn't wait. Whatever. What? I didn't. Tell me another lie. I'll keep your ass home today. You could have just told me the truth and said, yeah, Mom, I couldn't wait to see if I was a winner. You wouldn't get punished for opening the damn bottle. That's stupid. You get punished for lying, I'll tell you that much.
How do you handle mistakes when you make a mistake? Do you feel devalued or ashamed? Or do you use mistakes as opportunities to learn from experience? And again, your behavior will be modeled. Not so much what you say, but really what you do.
It's important to me as far as my kids go that they do know that they're not just told, I love you. I mean, anybody can utter those words. I had adults all my life, oh, of course I love you, you're my stepchild, or you're my foster child, I love you. But it comes in actions. And I think I take a greater effort in my actions to show my children that I love them.
Mom and Dad.
Is he done eating? Ask him to eat. Get up there and eat your dinner. Okay, go eat your dinner. Go outside and finish doing your hair then. You do it right. Stuff to make the bugs go on the grass. Shut the door.
Don't get down from that table until you finish that food. You hear me?
Yeah.
Pick up that fork. Sometimes, when the excitement is over, when the event is over and forgotten about, I think about, maybe I shouldn't have been so hard. Maybe I should have been a little less rigid in my thinking, you know, and told him, hey, you know, when he's good, tell him, hey, you did a good job. But when he's bad, just not be so hard, because whatever kind of discipline I give him, whether it's good or bad, you know, this is going to carry over into his other family, and he's going to remember it. Me and her, we deal with one another, you know, how do I handle it? You know, do I get upset? Do I scream and cry? Do I beat, rant, rave, tear the house up, whatever the case may be? I got to be real careful because he's noticing all this. Kids notice a lot, and this is how they become trained to act. They get their family and they grow up.
Tough does not mean mean, and mean does not work. Tough means consistent. Tough means responsible. Tough means those kind of things to us here.
And it works?
Yeah, I think it works.
And she came in and from school, I had no idea where she'd been, and found out she was with somebody I didn't appreciate that she was with, and I was cooking dinner. I couldn't even take the time to sit down and talk to her, and all heck broke loose.
Where the heck have you been? No, think before you talk, Kenny. I talked to Lisa, dear, on the phone.
What?
So now, truthfully, tell me where you've been, because I'm going to find out.
What are you talking about?
Tell me where you've been. Don't
I
spin
went
me.
out with my friends. I went with Lisa for a couple minutes and not.
No, Lisa said she has not even seen you.
Yes, she's seen me.
What
Mom.
friends, honey? Carly hasn't seen you. Megan hasn't seen you.
Yes, they have.
Am I speaking to my child in a way that I would like to be spoken to? Again, not to suggest that children should be treated as equals in terms of parenting, but that they should be treated as equals because they are, just like parents, human beings.
You weren't where you said you were going to be. The rule is, if you're not where said you're going to be, you let us know.
Okay, I'll let you know next time. I'm sorry.
Well, we do this every time. Okay, next time I'll let you know.
But I don't have my pager with me, of course, because I don't pick up my pager until, like, I come home from school or something. I never take it to school.
Well, I just talked to Carly. She says, I don't know where Danny is, but I'll page her. Maybe she'll answer my page.
I don't have my pager, and she knows that.
Well,
why
would she say that? Because if this is the kind of friends you're hanging out with, Dan, it's wrong. What?
What? Wrong. Oh my head. I'm not doing anything wrong. You're just flipping out about nothing.
No, I'm flipping out. No, we're not spaghetti. I'm flipping out because you don't obey the rules. And I have a right. You know what the rule is. When you change places from where you're supposed to be, you call.
Well, you're flipping out about like absolutely nothing. It's not that big of a deal.
Where did you go, Dan?
Landon. Carly's for a little while. Then we went over to Justin's for a little while. Is that okay? I already told you. He was with Rylan Hayes. I was with Justin. Justin was with Rylan. We were with Rylan. Rylan was with Jordan. Okay?
No.
Yes, I told you that about 2 minutes ago.
I know you told me, but it's not okay that you were with them.
Why not?
You don't want me to answer that, do you?
Yes, I do, actually.
How am I going to speak to my teenager so he or she is going to listen to me? How can I still let them know I'm there even though they're pushing me away? How can I help to try to get them to solve problems? You know, it may be a different thing. Teenagers have one foot in childhood, one in adult life, and who knows where sometimes they are. But again, it's the guideposts. Parents can say, does my child still feel loved? Am I teaching them problem-solving skills? Am I finding time alone with them where I don't mention their schoolwork or their friends or whatever, but just spend time with them? And these are the ways of setting a foundation where you'll be better able to speak with them, and maybe they'll listen to you.
Later on, when I sat down and took the time and we talked about it, and she realized how much, my reasons why I didn't like her being where she was, and my reasons about why I worried when she didn't come home from school. And then it helped a lot, and she, not only was I trying to put my feet in her shoes, but she would try and put her feet in my shoes as a mother. It seemed to be more effective than the screaming, the yelling, the taking away, and I've noticed with my older ones, as much as you treat them like adults, they'll act like adults.
I think late 20th century parenting is analogous to Michelangelo carving a large chunk of marble. And that's a process that requires great force, great energy, great insight, and you have to see what you're looking for in that block of marble before you ever begin. And as you get close to that masterpiece, if you chip too far, you've ruined it. You have a large pile of rubble, and everybody's frustrated. And I think parents today, for whatever reason, seem to adhere to that view. Now, there's an alternate view that we propose, which is you can create an equally beautiful piece of art by starting with a lump of clay and building on it and shaping it and smoothing it, and if you don't like it, changing it. It's a much more flexible, forgiving approach, one that builds up rather than chips down.
Well, I don't think there's a lack of opportunity. So I think with a lot of patience and over time, I think through example.
I'd like to think I teach it to them by example.
By example, I hope. That's what I think I do, the best I can.
Try and make sure that as I find myself in situations that they can see how I will react, that they see that I can deal with things, and hopefully teach by example like I was taught.
We have to use our experiences to guide them a little bit. To expect children to just find their way in this world without the experience of their parents, I think, is asking too much and expecting too much.
Letting them learn from their mistakes. Don't always rush to their side. Let them learn.
Showing them love and showing them that life is hard, but you can do it. You can go through things.
I think having really good communication skills with your children, treating them as your peers.
Just talking to them every day and teaching them hopefully the right things to do and give them the conscience they need to make the right decisions.
If they try, they've already won half the battle. I mean, they're only losing the battle if they don't try at all.
You figured, okay, I'm going to grad school.
Well, actually, I never thought that. My mentors were saying, hey, you'll be just fine. And I'm thinking, I don't know, So I applied to like 13 schools. I applied to like sort of 3 lower end ones that I felt pretty confident in. A lot of in the middle where it was sort of like maybe, maybe not. And then they said pick 3 sort of dream schools where you just love to be if you could. and I selected California, Berkeley, Columbia, and Harvard.
And how did you do?
I got into Berkeley, I got into Harvard, and I was a finalist at Columbia. It was very exciting because that really was the place I wanted to be. There's times even now where I'm sitting there and when things are difficult, where there's some tough classes, and I realize that how lucky I am to be given that chance.
Todd overcame incredible odds as a high school dropout and teenaged father, and he says he now knows the value of resilience.
Resilience for me, and I'm very interested in that now, because I wonder, I see a lot of children, and I realize there's not a lot of difference between me and these kids, because when I would see them and just kind of talk to their parents, I realized that was me. That's exactly me. I thought, so what's the difference? I mean, is it just luck? Is it chance? What? And I realized that I think resilience is the term that best defines it, and even that's sort of hard to define. And I realized this is what I think it is, that my parents were smart enough to look at the long-term perspective and realize that, yeah, we're having battles with this kid, right? I mean, on a daily basis, and it's frustrating and it can be rocky, but ultimately there's got to be a foundation that he can fall back on, and that was it. And the funny thing is it was so much more example and sort of knowledge that why I may have disappointed them a lot, they never gave up on me.
But parents have to look at what is it I have in the most positive sense of the word control over. And what parents have control over are a lot of the interactions, the day-to-day interactions they have with their child. And the more knowledge they can gain about how do I inoculate my child against a lot of the future pressure and stress so that they'll be better able to handle it, they have a responsibility to do that.
In our great efforts to help our children not experience the adversities that perhaps some of us experienced, we insulate them, as opposed to saying, I'm going to inoculate you by, as you point out, exposing you to a low level of stress, not enough to cause you serious harm, but enough to help you begin to develop the skills that you will need to call in play when greater stresses come your way.
I believe that everybody has to have one person that can just be crazy about them no matter what. No matter what. And I mean, I remember getting kicked out of school for throwing one of those, what do you call them, stink bombs, whatever, in class. And, my parents were frustrated. They had to sort of say, we've got to correct this. And I remember we didn't have a lot of money back then, and what was in style were spandex pants, shorts. I don't know why. And I'm glad I don't have any pictures back then. And my grandmother, who also didn't have a lot of money, showed up at our house and said, here's a present for you. And she said, it's not because I'm proud of what you did, but it's because I love you. And the thing is, sorry, that seems so contrary to everything I've learned so far, that you reward that kind of behavior, you're going to keep getting it. But I still remember that this person loves me. So
how they decide to deal with situations at home, how they decide to deal with situations with friends, family, past experiences, ultimately is their choice. We can only show them part of the way, but the real change is in them.
If we don't help parents become parents, we're going to have a generation of children that don't know how to parent themselves. We don't have compassionate, caring people who know how to step in and help perpetuate culture and society and care for one another. I think we're going to lose all of our humanness. And it's simply because children are not learning basic skills.
We think because there's a good economy that children's emotional health is very good. We have to be careful not to have this mythology because people earn a certain amount of money and people have more material goods, that kids are not suffering a great deal, and statistics show they are. Let's put aside all those material goods. What is the emotional and spiritual life of a child? Are we touching that? Are we preparing them to feel more comfortable with themselves, to have higher self-worth? And so if people say, oh, kids have it easier today, let them enter the world of children, and we'll see that many kids earn a great deal of stress and distress, and many parents feel the same way. I think more than ever before, principles for developing a resilient mindset, parents developing a notion of resilient mindset and being resilient themselves are critical.
I know that sometimes children get to the point where they're annoying and they get on your nerves, but sit down with them, don't yell.
Don't nag. Don't
tell them, just push everything that you believe onto them. Ask them questions, listen to them.
Because listening lets them know that you care, that you're there, that you understand, and that you'll help them in any way that they need help.
Be more patient. I'd advise them to be more patient.
Love your kids and understand that they make mistakes and that they can learn from them and you can learn from them.
You do need to be told that you're smart and that you're good, because after a while, if you haven't been told it for a long time, you just kind of think maybe you're not worth anything.
If they get a B on the report card, don't say, why isn't this an A? Just say, I'm glad you got a B. This is a really good B.
Every kid is different. Don't have the same rules on every kid. And when they do have a hard time, just hug them and say that you love them and that you'll help them out.
Adults can do like what they want if they put their heart to it. They can change it, they can make it good or they can make it bad. It's really up to them, and it's up to us kids to help that too.
What have we learned? Well, kids have to develop a resilient mindset. They've got to learn to deal with the adversity in life. The tools: empathy, responsibility, compassion, problem solving, and self-discipline. The bottom line, our kids need us, supportive adults, whoever you are. Believe in them, and then show them that you believe in them. It's essential. It must be part of our legacy to the next generation. I'm Mike Schneider. Thank you for watching.